enlightenment, personal growth, being awake, woke, or whatever you call it, it all means the same thing. Because as human beings, you see, we all take part in personal growth. We can either grow to become healthy, happy individuals who are powerful and more enlightened, or we can grow into a state of disrepute where we become stagnant. Let me explain what I mean by stagnant. If you ever go and you find a pool somewhere or a little pond somewhere in the woods, and you find a rancid smell, and you find that it's all covered with green and brown, and nothing is able to live in it anymore except the microorganisms that can live off of and produce sulfurous, horrible odors, the microorganisms that have virtually sucked all the oxygen out of it. That is where stagnation comes from. It comes when one organism decided, because of the conditions there, that it could grow more and more and more until it became the predominant organism and it sucked the life out. So nothing else could grow there or live there or survive there. When I talk about us growing to be stagnant, that's what I'm speaking about. And I'm mostly talking about on a corporate level, a larger level, a level where our group, our state, our country, our neighborhood, whatever our collective group is, begins to become stagnant like that. Where we have one group that sucks all the oxygen and begins to destroy things because life can no longer exist because of what these microorganisms have decided to do when the conditions were right. In our country right now, we find ourselves in that state. In most of the world, we find ourselves in that state when we look at the spiritual level and the philosophical level, where there's one group of people who have decided that they are the only right ones. They have decided that they are the only ones who deserve to be able to live the way they would like to. They have decided all of the resources should belong to them. In the United States, it's about 1% of the people owning 90% of the goods, and I think that in the rest of the world it's about the same. And so they suck all of the oxygen out of the system as the other 90% are struggling to make ends meet. And that's where we find ourselves now, growing towards stagnation instead of growing towards enlightenment or being woke, as people call it. The truth is, though, when we are woke, we are awake. All that means is that we realize that we are in an interdependent web of existence and that what one group does affects the other. We realize, you see, that if we support the system, if we help the system, if we begin to do things to heal the system, it grows towards health instead of stagnation. And this health of the whole filters down and it promotes the health of each and every individual. And this filtering down can be seen in the content of what is being passed down religiously, philosophically, through the laws and education, through the media, all of these things. All of these things are somewhat like veins or rivers coming from the source and flowing out like tributaries to water each person within the system. And when we look at the tributaries and their condition, we can see the condition of the source. Is the source open? Is it diverse? Is it pure? Is it oxygenated? Or is it stagnant? I'm not going to answer that today, right here, but I invite each person listening to answer that themselves, you see, because I don't need to teach anybody anything. All I'm doing is pointing to ways of understanding the truth, seeing the truth, and learning to think critically, learning to discern instead of judge. Judging always has condemnation attached to it. One is not only seeing what is happening clearly, but is labeling it good or bad and feeling the need to or the right to stomp down and condemn. Discernment is a different thing. Discernment is seeing what is happening clearly and understanding it completely before making any type of judgment. And that is what we are missing today. We don't see that in the media. We don't hear that in the churches or mosques or synagogues much anymore. Most of the educational system teaches opinions. Science has become dogmatic, fighting for its place on the hierarchy. The economists are only famous when they support a neoliberal policy which has been proven for the last 50 years to be a fallacy, to not work, to be what they used to call voodoo economics. By looking at these strains, we can see that our system is in a lot of trouble. Question then is, what can we do to change that? What do you do to change a stagnant pond? Well, perhaps you can change it by getting more water coming in and out of it if possible, getting more oxygen in. I've seen places where there are ponds with a sort of fountain in the middle that is shooting water up and stirring the water constantly in order to keep it from becoming stagnant, because it stirs it and keeps it moving and keeps the oxygen in, keeps it refreshed, keeps the microorganisms that would destroy everything down. And by adding different types of fish, insects, frogs, etc., who will eat some of those organisms to keep it in balance, it's refreshed. And that the ones who are adding those things are known as the woke crowd. The crowd that is awake. The crowd that sees injustice and knows that the way to bring about justice is to stir things up, to reintroduce oxygen into the system. The oxygen meaning the truth, the way, the light, the understanding of how the world should work, according to our basic principles and those of the people who founded the country, even though they couldn't live those principles out. It's about going back to the root, going back to the source, and creating smaller atmospheres that is like the source or the mission statement that we as human beings have lived or desired to live for so long. If we can do this, we won't be led astray. If we couldn't do this, we create a world of justice, equity, and compassion for everybody, not just 1% of the people or the 9% clinging to that 1% who are hoarding everything. No. we create a better world for everyone. And so even in your religious search and your spiritual journey, educational process, I would suggest that you really begin to explore the content of what is being given to you. And as you explore the content in a non-judgmental way, not giving way, not cutting slack to people because they tell you their intent is good while they're doing bad things. Not doing that, no. By looking at what they are doing, not why they are doing it. And when we can understand what they are doing, you see, we can begin to judge the why. And this is not only about religion, no. It's about this new spirituality movement where people are taking quotes way out of context, putting them up on social media or speaking about them, blowing them up without really looking at the deeper meaning. Because there's one deeper meaning in all of these things. And that is the meaning that no one wants to see. And that meaning is that we in our individual lives are not only victims of the problem that takes place in a society that's lost. Sometimes we are the cause. Sometimes the collective we are the cause of the problems, and holding that in its place in two poles, victim versus cause, creates a paradox, a flow of energy. And this energy that comes from paradox is known as life. It's known as the middle way, living in this tension, expanding oneself to understand fully both poles creates life and brings us deeper into reality. We begin to understand the way of the world and ourselves. And then the biggest problem is living in this tension with this great understanding. That is where practices like yoga, meditation, qigong, tai chi, all of these spiritual practices come in. They come in so that we can expand ourselves enough to see the world as it really is. Not as the way we want it to be. There was an old book a long time ago written by Carlos Castaneda about a character named Don Juan Mateus, who was a warrior. One of the things that he said about the warrior was the warrior sought to be perfect in every thought and action, while at the same time realizing that there was no perfection. Don Juan went further to explain that the reason the warrior did this was that once the warrior woke up and could see everything as it is and learn to let go of the false self, the false ideas about society, that person could just sit and not care about anything enough to the point where they could starve to death as they realize who they were, their truth, and their power. So instead of doing that, they would engage in the world in a way to help other people and in a way that challenged them as they tried to live perfectly in an imperfect place. This would mean taking on codes of honor, doing certain things in certain ways. It would mean reaching the state that some of the yogis talk about, where the illusion called Maya and all of the struggle becomes something called the dance of Layla. It becomes more like a dance, more like a play, more like acting out, and then one begins to dance and enjoy one's life, one's challenges, and one's struggle instead of fighting against them. This is what happens to the warrior, and this is what should be happening to each and every one of us. If your spiritual journey is one that is rooted in the idea of domination, the idea that you are better because you understand more than other people, or stages of progress, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and congratulating each person as they get higher and higher, it's likely that it has been influenced so much by the system of domination we're in that it carries the same microorganisms, the same poison as the rest of the system. And this is to be expected. But my advice for you is this: take the good, throw out the bad, do the practice, drop any suggestions or philosophy that don't go along with the source or the heart of the practice. And in that we will find truth. We will find power. We will find love. We will be awakened. We will be woke. A word that I never even used that much before until far-right demagogues and ignorant people began to try to demean it, to take away the power of being enlightened or awake, to try to make people who were awake, the good people, feel ashamed because they aren't viruses attacking the whole, grabbing and trying to see how much they can get, not caring about anyone else's lifestyles or the welfare of the planet or the earth. So I use woke. And I would suggest also that each and every one of us begin to reclaim all of those words and all of those stories that have been stolen from us by those who don't love, those who don't care, those who only want power. And we should begin to use those stories again, because those stories were given to human beings, not just one or two groups, or the individuals who are powerful enough to rape, pillage, and kill in order to force their wills upon us. All of the major religions have various teachings that touch all of our hearts. They have leaders, great teachers. But the religious people will say you have to join them in order to tap into the teachings of these great teachers or to understand them or to study them. I say now that you can have the teachers without the institutional religion. You can have Jesus without being a Christian, Buddha without being a Buddhist, Krishna without being a Hindu. Any religious figure is available to you because those figures came to bring light to you, not to create institutions. When we realize this, and we take advantage of the teachings of those who we like and allow ourselves to be guided in the direction that we would like through meditation, contemplation, prayer, and true dedication, when we do that, we will be free. and we will grow into healthy beings, and we will be like rivers of living water flowing from the source of life itself. And that, my friends, is true spirituality and true religion, because there is no distinction between the two if you do any of them right. Thanks for being with us again. If you want more information about us, visit us at nextstepcoaching.mysite.com or on Facebook. We are Diana Sarah Holistic Healing, Diana Sarah Holistic Health, bringing together the richness and wholeness of each and every religion, each and every philosophy, each and every ideology, so that we can begin to live the healthy ones together, the ones that work together, and cast off those that have been twisted and warped or stolen in order to maintain the stagnation that the devouring organisms need in order to hold their place. Thanks again. Namaste, everyone. And please remember to subscribe, hit the bell, and share this video with others who may be like-minded. Namaste.